This is your boy DJ Leon D, and on this channel we talk about travel, money, and lots of cooking. Three things I know quite a bit about. I'm not an expert at anything. Nope, not an expert. I just been around a long time and know a lot. Let's get it on. Yeah, welcome to another episode. You know, here's one of the things that always bother me. I buy a lot of seasoning, and let me tell you what I just did. I just bought seasoning for this barbecue season. I just bought seasoning about 3 or 4 days ago. I'm kind of excited to get it. But let me tell you what I did though. I spent $240 on seasoning. $240. Say it one more time. $240 on seasoning. And you think that's impossible. Because see, you use McCormick's, and McCormick's only charge you a couple bucks for a small little 4-ounce. No, I don't buy 4 ounces. Every single seasoning I buy, I order it from the manufacturer, and I get 90 ounces of each one. 90 ounces. But I'm gonna tell you what you don't know. Why you spending $2.50 or $3 for McCormick's or some of these other flat brands? And I'm not saying you're wrong if that's what your taste bud has been accustomed to for the last however old you are. I'm not saying you're wrong. But you go there and you spend $3 for 4 ounces or whatever it is. I get 90 ounces of the same thing that I like that's equivalent to what you probably like. And so you think $3, 4 ounces. I spent about $17 for 90 ounces. $17 for 90 ounces. Because like I said, I don't go to Piggly Wiggly, Winn-Dixie, Public. That's not me. Now, if you are just an average griller or smoker, that stuff might work for you. I used to make my own products on seasoning. But then I found out that I could go buy one or maybe two seasonings, combine them, and get the flavor profile that I want. Now, there are times I may have to add a little more of this or a little more of that because you can't take away from seasoning. So I buy things that lack a few things that I want, and I add my own to it. And so the key is that I use a lot of seasoning too, because I cook a lot. And I don't cook three slabs of ribs. No. I'm usually doing anywhere from 12 to 24 slabs of ribs at one time. I can't remember the last time I cooked less than 6, and that was for the family. I can't remember the last time I cooked less than 6 slabs of ribs. And then when I do hamburgers, I'm usually doing 36 at a time. That's for the family. I do 18 a lot because sometimes it's just me. Yeah, just me. But I tend to cook a lot of high-end meats, like stuff like ribeye, but I like tomahawks. And as you know, I usually get my tomahawks in about a 7-pound, 8-pound cut. Now, don't get me wrong, you're gonna trim some fat off, but I like that because I have the option of trimming or not trimming. I don't get 4-pound tomahawks. No, because they're about 3¼ pound when you finish smoking them. But I get large ones. And I got a couple of friends. Now, we'll take the large ones and we'll divvy them up. We'll cut them up, whatever, because we want them smoky and tender. No, So, but when I cook those, I use a lot of seasoning because that's a big piece of meat. That's a very, very big piece of meat. And so, like I said, I buy some high-end meat, and I even use stuff like Old Bay. I buy that 90 ounces at a time. Because if I got the smokers going, your wife wants some fish. Normally salmon. Wild salmon. So my whole point is, why would you buy high-end food and have cheap seasoning? Now, what I buy for seasoning, you yourself can go buy it from the same place. They don't hide that fact. It's just that most of it is not sold in stores and in your grocery stores. You're not gonna find it in Albertsons. Now you will find it some places in Texas because that's where they originate from, and they got famous by being great in their home state. So that's how they got famous. And as I traveled the country, last year I went to 25 different cities in America. I had barbecue in each one, and only half of them, maybe a third, I thought the barbecue was good. Now, some places, they'll tell you the barbecue is good because that's the only game in town, because that one place is the only place. I'll give you a perfect example. I went to Boise, Idaho twice last year. The barbecue sucks. They ain't known for it. They don't brag about it. They don't say we got it. So the one barbecue joint in town is where everybody goes. And if you've never had anything better, then what you have is the best you're gonna get, and that's good to you because you don't have options. You go to Texas, on the East Coast, you got a lot of options. But let me tell you about the East Coast. You got a hit and miss places along the East Coast. But once you get past Virginia, maybe middle of Maryland, nah, not even Maryland. Once you get past Virginia, good barbecue is very, very limited. Very, very limited. Good barbecue. Yeah, you ain't gonna find good barbecue everywhere. And one of the reasons is seasoning. You gotta do the seasoning. Now, I buy seasoning for everything. Whether it's shrimp, no matter what it is, Maryland like crabs. So blue crabs is king in Maryland. But they make Old Bay. And I buy Old Bay 90 ounces at a time. And at the end of almost every year, I'm almost out of all of those. And you know what I do with what's left? I throw it away. It's an ounce here, a couple ounces here. I throw it away. And the reason I do that, because I know I'm going to buy everything new next year. I do not want last year's seasoning on this year's meat. Because seasoning is kind of funny. The longer you have it, the weaker it gets over time. Even at house temperature. And plus, I'm not a big fan of using things that has expired a year ago. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to buy stuff that hasn't expired yet. Now, I would use it if I'm close to the if I'm just a little bit past the expiration date. I would use it because expiration dates are strictly a best used by date. It's best if you use it by this date. They say that for a reason. It's going to get weaker over time. You want the strongest flavors, the strongest everything, then use it by this date right here. Yeah, just do that. That's all you got to do. Now, they're not saying it's going to kill you or it's going to be real bad. But talk about best by date. My family, if it's a vegetable and it's 1 day past expiration, they want to throw it out. It's kind of funny how that works. 1 day past expiration, they want to throw it out. But if it's candy, they don't quite feel that way. It can be a year old, last Halloween. They don't give a damn. They still gonna try it. Soda, same way. I'm like, well, why you feel the way with the vegetables? I don't want to get sick. No, you're not gonna get sick from the vegetables. You're gonna get sick from all the candy and stuff, but you can't tell kids and you can't tell your wife, you can't tell certain people that it's gonna happen. Because chocolate is chocolate and they think it lasts forever. And I mean, for the most part, it really does, because the military had it in World War II in their C ration packets, and they made those things, and those things last for years. There are people on YouTube who's eating World War II rations right now. There are people down in some ghettos doing the same thing, because from what I heard, with the price of food, your options are limited if you're on a very, very strict budget, or a low budget, as some people call them. But now, let's talk about seasoning. One thing I said about a year ago, and people write me about every now and then, I said that there's no such thing as too much seasoning. and somebody just ripped me. They say, BS, there's always too much seasoning on a lot of different things. What I said was, there's no such thing as too much seasoning. And that's very, very true. But a smart person like myself, what I would do, if you can add it to the meal later or to the product you're cooking later, if you can add it, don't put a lot on it. Perfect example, salt. I do not add a lot of salt in my seasoning, nor do I like a lot of salt, because everybody's taste bud for salt is it's totally different. So you can sit there and say, hey, listen, I have very little salt, and add salt later. That's why they give you shaker jars for salt. That's why they give you, salt and pepper, because you can add those later. So there's no need to put a lot of that in your seasoning. But there's no seasoning that don't have salt in it. Very, very, very few things that don't have any salt. It may say low sodium, but it don't say no sodium. So that's how it works. So some people come there with the attitude that, hey, this don't have any salt in it. Oh, it's got salt. It's just low sodium. Very few times in my life I ever tasted any kind of seasoning and with no salt. That's damn near impossible. Because salt is tasty by itself. Now, I don't know if you ever just tasted just salt by itself. Put some in your hand and taste it. Oh, yeah, it's tasty. Pepper is spicy. People like a little kick. I'm not a big kick person, but I like to have that kick on the very end of what I'm eating. So I didn't say just drench your meat in seasoning. No, you gotta have some common sense too. And see, that's where I make a mistake thinking that everybody got a little bit. I know a lot of people ain't got very much, but everybody got a little bit. And I've seen people who sit down to eat a meal and they just add salt without even tasting the meal. And they want to know why they got high blood pressure. People like that are not very smart. You should taste the food to determine if you need to add anything to it. Whether it's more butter for your grits or whether it's more salt for your meat. You should always taste food first. And then also, salt can hide poor quality cook procedures and cooking stuff too. Salt can hide a lot of things. But I don't add a lot of salt when I cook because I give you the option to add what you want to add based on your taste buds and how you want to die. You might be looking to die tomorrow, but I'm not going to help you get there in my house. Now, if you're in the front yard, backyard, or you out in your house, I'll help you in a heartbeat. Just you ain't got to ask really. Just give me the hint that you might want to go now. And I'm going to say, sure, let's go now. So I like a lot of seasoning on certain things because what people forget too is that a lot of seasoning is going to fall off when you cook. A lot of seasoning. And that's the reason I don't season fat. Because when the fat burns off, the seasoning is going to fall off. So I don't waste a lot of seasoning on fat, period. Now, a lot of you people do because you're going to eat that fat that don't burn off. Perfect example. Fried pork chop, which I haven't had in about 30 years. I'm not a big fried food person because I don't see a lot of healthiness eating a lot of grease. I just don't see that. Now, do I like pork chops? Hell yeah. I bread them. I like that seasoning. I bread them. But I don't fry them. But I season them the way you would if you fried it without the flour. Bread them, you don't use flour. But I use the exact same seasoning. Just that I don't coat them with the flour because I'm not going to fry them. Now, when you fry things, a lot of seasoning come off. But the flour don't. But not all of it, but a big percentage of it does. When you bread them, very little comes off. Because you're laying it on the side and there's no grease bubbling up, taking it off. There's none of that. So that's the difference. You like pork chops, I like pork chops. You like seasoning, I love seasoning. Now, when I cook food in my house for my wife, I put very little seasoning of anything on it. She's not a big seasoning person. She loves bland meat to me, but she do it because of health. I think, oh, she's eating that bland meat that I cook. Oh, I know it's bland. It ain't like my piece I got over here that's loaded with seasoning. No, no, no. It don't have any of that. It do not have any of that. So we different, but I cook for both of us, just that I do hers different. And then my relatives, there isn't anything in the world they can't fry. At least try. They try to fry everything. And that's how they got their health issues, because they've been eating their way for 70, 80 years. No, not 70, 80. Let's try 60, 70 at the most, because most of them don't make it past 65. I don't think I got any relatives that ever got a Social Security check for more than, 3 years. Yep. So my whole thing is I use a lot of seasoning, but it also depends on what it is I'm cooking. I use a lot of seasoning on a brisket. I do. It's damn near black when I get to season it. So much pepper on it and other stuff, and brisket rub and all kind of other stuff. Yeah, I use quite a bit. But I know with the smoker, I'm gonna smoke a lot of it right off, because the fat's gonna ooze out. A brisket is a fatty meat on the East Coast. Maybe not so much in Texas, because it seemed like from what I hear, they still got a lot of butchers who will customize and cut your meat for you. They still have a lot of that. I don't have a lot of that. East Coast, they give you a big old piece of meat and say, figure it out yourself. Butchers, that's something of the past. You're not gonna find butchers running around here very often. Nope. And then if you go to a grocery store, they are not going to trim it for you. No, they all about mass production. Now we do have some meat markets around here. They'll trim it for you. Good people, but normally they are out of the way in small little towns, and they do a real good job. But you got to go 30, 40 miles out of your way to get there, and you got to call in advance and hope they got what you want and stuff. And some of them even and they damn sure cost more, because they're not like a Costco or a Sam's Club or other places where they're just big mass marketers. They are not in their business. They sell meat because they own or manage a farm for the local co-op or for the local people there. But they'll sell to you. But it also, when you go out there, because you went so far, you tend to overbuy a lot of stuff, because you don't know when you're gonna make it back out there again. So you say, you know what, I should get 20 pounds of ribeye, and you get 20 pounds of ribeye, make it 40. I'm not gonna be out here for the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I know I'm gonna want some ribeye for me, my friends, over the period of time. And they charge quite a bit more per pound. And the price don't bother me, but I don't want to buy a lot of meat knowing that I'm not going to cook it anytime soon. And, you hope you got to dry age it, or, whatever you got to do to maintain. But it just, when you're paying $10 to $12 a pound and you're buying 20 pounds, that's a lot of meat to not cook the same day or the next day. There's a lot of meat to not cook. So when you season your food, I always let mine sit, not 2 or 3 hours. Overnight. I let it sit. It just I like for it to soak in there. But one thing I don't do a lot, but I'm gonna get more into this year, is marinade. Now I know how to marinate. It's just that marinade takes up time and space, because I don't marinate for an hour, 2 hours overnight. Like same way, when I do my, dry rubs, wet rubs are all right, overnight and stuff. And the advantage is it gets through all the meat, because your meat's soaking in it. Dry rub is only where you put it at. So that's a big difference to me. But I'm gonna get more into that. But I always have this thing that when you take it out of the bucket and put it on a smoker, all that work you did to get the marinade right, 90% is falling right into your grease pan. I'm thinking it's a lot of work to give up 90% of it. Some people like that. Not I. Dry rub, very little falls off until you put it on the smoker. And then not a lot fall off then. But on marinade, it's like putting something in water and picking it up. It's all going to fall back in the bucket. So don't be afraid to put a lot of seasoning and then adjust. I don't like putting a little bit and trying to adjust because some places a little bit won't do it. You can't go back and re-add after it's cooked additional seasoning unless it's salt and pepper. Anything else? Maybe hot pepper and that kind of mess. But nope, try to get it right the first time. But if you over-season it, you can always tell yourself, I got to dial this back. I got to dial it back a little bit and I'll be all right. You got to tell yourself that. Okay, this is your boy DJ Leon D telling you about seasoning. How much should you use? Should you use it? How it works? And now you're a lot smarter about it if you listen to this video. This channel is going to always make you smarter. We will never make you dumber. Peace. Seasoning. We're out.